The mining colony on Drakkar 7 wasn't supposed to support life. The planet's crimson soil was too acidic, the atmosphere too thin, and the temperatures plummeted to -40 during the night cycles. But humans had a peculiar habit of making homes in impossible places, and Jason was no exception. He'd been working the deep excavation site for 3 standard years now, his mechanical exosuit humming softly as he navigated the canyon walls. The pay was good enough to forget about Earth's overcrowded cities, and the solitude suited him fine. That is, until the day he found them. The cave-in happened during his routine survey of Sector 7. A hairline fracture in the rock face gave way, revealing a hidden chamber that sensors had somehow missed. Jason's helmet lamp cut through the darkness, illuminating crystalline formations that pulsed with an internal luminescence. But it wasn't the crystals that made him freeze. 2 pairs of eyes, vertical pupils dilating in the sudden light, stared back at him. From a nest of woven minerals and what looked like melted stone, the creatures were no larger than house cats, their scales shimmering between deep purple and midnight blue. Dragon hatchlings, actual, living dragon hatchlings on a planet the Galactic Council had declared geologically dead for millennia. Jason's calm crackled. "Jay, you copy? Your vitals just spiked." He muted the channel. The hatchlings chirped a sound like wind chimes made of broken glass, and stumbled toward him on uncertain legs. Their movements were uncoordinated, desperate. One of them, slightly smaller than the other, collapsed halfway. "Damn it," Jason muttered, his breath fogging his visor. The environmental readout confirmed what he suspected. The chamber's thermal regulation had failed. Whatever mechanism had kept this nest warm for who knew how long had given out, probably triggered by the cave-in. These hatchlings were freezing to death. Protocol was clear. Xenobiological discoveries required immediate quarantine and council notification. Interference with indigenous species carried a minimum 20-year sentence. But as Jason watched the smaller hatchling, he found himself thinking of her as Jovi, though he had no idea why shiver violently. Protocol seemed like something written by people who'd never had to watch something die. He deactivated his exosuit's external speakers and opened the emergency thermal compartment. The space was designed for core samples that needed temperature control. But it would have to do. "Come here, you stubborn little things," he said softly, reaching out with his gloved hand. The larger hatchling, clearly male from the broader head structure, hissed and batted at his fingers with claws that sparked against the suit's polymer coating. Jason waited, patient. Humans were good at waiting. After a moment, the male Jason decided to call him Drake seemed to sense intent rather than threat and allowed himself to be scooped up. Jovi was barely conscious, her scales losing their luster. Jason cradled both hatchlings against his chest, feeling their cold bodies even through the suit's insulation. He activated the thermal compartment's heating elements and carefully placed them inside, leaving the panel partially open so they could breathe. Drake immediately wrapped himself around his sister, sharing what little body heat he had. "Smart kid," Jason approved. The comm crackled again. "Jason, if you don't respond in 30 seconds, I'm sending a rescue team." He sighed and reopened the channel. "I'm here, Maria. Just found something interesting." "Give me an hour." "Define interesting." "The kind that needs me to think before I file a report." There was a long pause. Maria had been on Drakkar 7 even longer than he had. She understood the gap between regulations and reality. "1 hour. Then I want a full explanation." Jason sealed the chamber and began his ascent back to the surface. The hatchlings tugged at his coat lining with tiny claws, seeking warmth, security, something their instincts told them a parent should provide. He adjusted the temperature carefully, monitoring their vitals through the suit's bioscanner, a modification he'd made for tracking his own health that now served an entirely different purpose. Back at his habitat module, Jason faced a choice. The right thing, according to every law and regulation, was to contact the council immediately. They'd send a xenobiological team, extract the hatchlings for study, probably dissect one to understand their physiology better. The species would be cataloged, protected, and these 2 individuals would become data points. Or he could do the human thing. He constructed a makeshift incubator from heating elements and a cargo container lined with thermal blankets. The hatchlings watched him work with intelligent eyes, Drake protective and alert. Jovi gradually recovering her strength. When he placed them inside, Jovi chirped a different sound this time, almost questioning. "Yeah, I know it's not your cave," Jason said, adjusting the temperature to match the readings he'd taken from their nest. "But it'll do until I figure this out." The next weeks developed a rhythm. Jason worked his regular shifts, but his evenings were spent researching dragon biology from the fusonological databases available to miners. The hatchlings grew rapidly, their scales hardening and developing intricate patterns unique to each. Drake's became geometric, almost crystalline in structure, while Jovi's flowed like liquid metal. They were smart, frighteningly so. Within days, they understood the concept of doors. Within 2 weeks, they'd figured out how to manipulate simple tools. Jason found Drake trying to repair a broken scanner with his claws, somehow understanding that the disconnected wire was the problem. "You're going to get me in so much trouble," Jason told them. But he was smiling. The hatchlings became his shadows. When he worked on equipment repairs, they observed intently, occasionally offering their own solutions, a claw precisely placed to hold a component, a burst of flame carefully controlled to weld a seam. Drake showed an aptitude for mechanics, while Jovi demonstrated an almost supernatural understanding of energy flows. It was Jovi who saved his life when the atmospheric processor failed during a dust storm. Jason had been outside, caught in the sudden pressure drop that would have ruptured his suit in minutes. But Jovi, barely 3 months old and already the size of a large dog, had somehow sensed the danger. She directed Drake to create a thermal updraft while she manipulated the electromagnetic fields around the habitat, something that should have been impossible, creating a safe corridor for Jason to reach the airlock. As he collapsed inside, gasping, both hatchlings pressed against him, chirping frantically. Drake's scales were warm, radiating heat. Jovi's hummed with residual energy. "Okay," Jason wheezed, "we're keeping each other alive." "Fair deal." Maria eventually discovered them, of course. She stood in the habitat doorway, staring at the 2 dragons now nearly waist-high, who stared back with calm intelligence. "You know, this is insane," she said flatly. "Yep, the council will exile you. Possibly execute you. Probably." She was quiet for a long moment, watching Jovi delicately manipulate a holographic display with one claw, while Drake organized tools by function. "They're sapient, aren't they?" "I think they're smarter than we are," Jason admitted. Maria pulled out her datapad, fingers flying across the screen. "Then we're not reporting pets. We're reporting first contact with an intelligent species. That changes everything." She was right. Under first contact protocols, sapient species had rights, including the right to choose their own destiny. If Jovi and Drake chose to stay with the human who'd saved them, who'd wrapped them in warmth when they were dying, who'd taught them and learned from them in return, well, that was their choice to make. Jason looked at the hatchlings, no, his friends, and saw them watching him with those impossibly intelligent eyes. Drake chirped something that almost sounded like approval. Jovi's scales shimmered with what he'd learned to recognize as contentment. "We'll figure it out," Jason promised them. "We always do, because that's what humans did. They found impossible situations and made them work. They wrapped the vulnerable in warmth and kept working, kept adapting, kept caring, even when it meant breaking every rule, facing every consequence." The dragon twins tugged at his coat, and Jason smiled, already planning their next move. After all, they had a whole galaxy to explore together.